Yesterday, Mohamed Salah equaled Erling Haaland and Thierry Henry's goals and assists record in a Premier League season. In a 38 game Premier League season, Mohamed Salah has now been involved in 44 goals and assists combined with his two penalties yesterday against Southampton, which is pretty impressive, right? Like if you look at it and you look at Mohamed Salah and the season he's having right now, there's an argument it's the greatest. I mean, it's not over yet, but let's say Mohamed Salah gets to 30 goals and he has 20 assists. You could make an argument and say that's the greatest Premier League season that we've ever seen. And so today I wanted to talk about Mohamed Salah, his legacy, and ultimately, is he the greatest Premier League player of all time? I won't be saying that. I'm not gonna say he is, but it is. He's definitely in the discussion. For me, he's definitely top five. So before we get into that, please remember to subscribe on our channel at We Talk Football 24, and also look us up on Instagram and look out for us on Facebook at We Talk Football. So let's get into the video. Mohamed Salah, is he the greatest Premier League player of all time? The short answer to this is Mohamed Salah is not the greatest Premier League player of all time. That's what I think. And I think I'm pretty confident I share that opinion with a whole lot of people. I don't think there are more people. I actually think there are very little people who would say Mohamed Salah is the greatest Premier League player of all time. I've never heard of anyone say that. Even this season, with the kind of season that Mohamed Salah is having, no one. I haven't heard Liverpool fans say that. I haven't had any other, person in football say that. And but you do have to admit Mohamed Salah is an all-time Premier League great. He's one of the greatest Premier League players to ever play in the Premier League because of the things that he's done individually and what he's achieved at Liverpool as well, right? And I know it's very easy to look at other things like what has he done for Egypt? What has he done in the Champions League? But for me, that's not a part of the conversation if we're just talking about the Premier League and what he's done and his achievements in the Premier League. But I absolutely do think, if you talk about the greatest players in Premier League history, I think Mohamed Salah is definitely in the top five. If you want to make a Mount Rushmore, I think Mohamed Salah is definitely in he's a Mount Rushmore Premier League player. And by that, Mount Rushmore is like the four greatest, right? And if you had to think about the four greatest Premier League players, he'd definitely be in that. There are a few names that you could put out there in Premier League greatness and Premier League Mount Rushmore. Cristiano Ronaldo is in that conversation. Kevin De Bruyne is in that conversation. John Terry, for me, he's in that conversation as a defender. Rio Ferdinand, maybe Rio, but definitely for me, I think John Terry is a top 10 Premier League player all time. Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard is a funny one. He's never won it, but I do think he's one of the greatest Premier League players to ever play because of just what he did with Liverpool. Even though he didn't win the Premier League, but his legacy is one of the greatest midfielders, one of the greatest players of all time. Is immense. It's really great. You have to mention Wayne Rooney as a Premier League great and a Mount Rushmore player, top four player. Obviously Mohamed Salah and obviously Thierry Henry. But if I had to like pin it down to just four players, four of the greatest Premier League players to have ever played, I would say Henry, Wayne Rooney, Mohamed Salah. Man, the fourth one is tough. Like there are a lot of players that could lay claim. The one player, the one player that's definitely not a top four Premier League player, in my opinion, not even top 10, is Ryan Giggs. Ryan Giggs, I'm sorry, Ryan Giggs must be one of the most overrated players I've ever seen, and one of the most overrated players in football that I've ever followed, because the way people talk about Ryan Giggs, they talk about him as if he was the best player for Manchester United when Manchester United were dominating and winning all those Premier League trophies, even going into Europe and winning European trophies. He wasn't the best player. He was in all those Man United winning teams. He wasn't even a top 10, top 5 player for Manchester United. He was a starting player who was a really good player. And I'm not saying he was bad. I'm not here to say Ryan Giggs was bad. But he was definitely not a leading one. He wasn't the best player. He wasn't one of the best players for Man United when they were winning. In a winning team, he's not one of the best players for Manchester United, and he wasn't. But that a little side note, but anyway, Mount Rushmore players in the Premier League. It's the fourth one is hard for me, because I do have players that I think were just amazing in the Premier League, right? I think John Terry was amazing. Patrick Vieira, Roy Keane, they were immense. I'll give you one. I think this guy, he changed a lot for Manchester United. And I think people don't talk about him a lot. Now this, I just spoke about Ryan Giggs as overrated. This guy, I feel like he's extremely underrated. One of the best players to play ever in the Premier League. Eric Cantona. He was amazing. He was what Manchester United needed to change their fortunes, because people don't talk about this enough. In Sir Alex Ferguson's first 6 seasons, right? There were seasons where Man United finished 11th, 13th, 8th. There were seasons they finished 2nd, but they didn't win immediately. And then they won after 6 years of Sir Alex Ferguson at the helm. And a huge part of Man United's dominance was Eric Cantona, the confidence, the swagger that he brought with him, the French je ne sais quoi that he brought with him, the elegance, the style, but also the winning that he came with at Man United was incredible. He played for Man United for 6 seasons. He won the Premier League 5 times out of those 6 seasons with United. The one time United didn't win the Premier League, that 1 year out of 6, was when he karate kicked a fan in the stands and he was banned for 6 months. So the only time Man United didn't win the Premier League in that 6-year span was because Eric Cantona, their best player, the best player, Eric Cantona, it's funny, flying karate kicked a fan in the stands, and he missed 6 months of that season, and Man United didn't win the Premier League. Now that's what I'm talking about. That's impact. That's what I'm talking about. Eric Cantona. But Anyway, like talking about Mohamed Salah, um, it's an incredible achievement. 44 goals and assists in one Premier League season, and it's not even done. Like the season is not finished. I think there are 9 games to go. There are 9 more games to go, and he's equaled Erling Haaland and Thierry Henry, who were both second. Number one is Alan Shearer and Andy Cole, who had 47 goals and assist seasons. And I think he'll definitely eclipse that record. Like if he scores 4 goals, he'll be number one, right? And it's not necessarily just about the assists, but I do think he'll get more assists. He didn't get an assist yesterday, but he did score 2 goals. He's amazing. Now, why I think Mohamed Salah is not the Premier League GOAT is I feel like watching Thierry Henry and watching him play and the things that he did was just it was amazing. He was fun to watch, and all like okay. Let me start here. Henry versus Salah is a great thing to talk about because they do have the stats, like the stats part of it. They do have very similar statistics. Henry has 2 titles. He has 2 Player of the Season awards, and he has 4 Golden Boot awards, right? While Mohamed Salah has 1 title, he's gonna have 2. He's gonna equal Henry on that front. He's gonna have 2. He has 3. He has 3 Golden Boot awards. He's gonna get his 4th one this season, and he also has 2. No. How many? He has 1 Player of the Year award. He's gonna get 2, so he's gonna equal Henry with that. Salah has played more games than Henry, 282, Henry 258. Henry and Salah both have 175 goals, but Henry has a better goals to games ratio, or goals per minute a minute per goals ratio. 122 to Mohamed Salah's 131. Salah has more assists, has more wins than Henry, a better win percentage. But Henry has more braces, 2 goals scored in a game, 34 to Salah's 27. Henry has 8 hat-tricks and Salah has 4. But all taking into account, Mohamed Salah has played more years, more seasons at Liverpool in the Premier League. And also, what is a little bit of a knock to Mohamed Salah is his time at Chelsea. He wasn't great at all at Chelsea. I think he spent 2 seasons at Chelsea and then he went to Fiorentina. And like those 2 seasons at Chelsea, they are a little bit of a knock because he was young. But Thierry Henry came in young at Arsenal. I think he was 21 or like early 20s. I think 21 when he came to Arsenal. And immediately he was Arsenal's best player, probably. Like, he made the difference. He scored goals. Like I was talking about Eric Cantona earlier and the kind of style that he had. Thierry Henry had the same je ne sais quoi as Eric Cantona. He was nicknamed Vavavoom for a reason because of his beauty, style, but also the power, the pace that he had. So like the stats are very similar between Salah and Henry, but watching them both, you could clearly see who has the more talent between the 2 players, who has the better technical ability between the 2 players, and who had more style. He was better. He was a better aesthetic player, and he could do more things. I feel like he could do a little more than Mohamed Salah. Like Mohamed Salah, like if you want to say the pace between the both of them is a wash because they're both extremely fast, but physically it's not close. Henry goes 6'2", power. He could he could he could he could go he could have a fight with a defender, a centre back, like a big strong centre back. You think you're gonna bully Thierry Henry? Think again. He's 6'2", strong as you, faster than you, better technically than anyone, and like Mohamed Salah, that's the one thing. Like when you watch him play, he does have great skill to go past players, right? Absolutely. But the one thing that I've always heard people say about Mohamed Salah is that he can be a little clunky with his touches. He can be a little like not as in control as like some players that we have watched offensively, and definitely not as in control of the ball, not as technical as Thierry Henry. Like Thierry Henry was he could take free kicks, he could shoot from outside the box, the side foot, open your foot kind of finish. Like Henry perfected that. He made that a thing. He made that one of his greatest weapons. One on one, opens his body, opens his foot, side foot, keeper no chance. And I know, like Mohamed, like I'm not gonna diminish or belittle Mohamed Salah. For me, like he top four player in Premier League history is Mohamed Salah, but he's definitely nowhere near Thierry Henry technically. I always say this, and maybe I've never said this on this platform, but it's something that I've always thought. I think the closest thing into like from a striker that we've seen to R9 is Henry. And I'm not saying, like, when I say the closest thing that football has seen to R9, Brazilian Ronaldo phenomenon, to R9, the closest thing for me is Thierry Henry. And I'm not saying that because I'm saying his level was close to R9. Like, I think R9 is the most gifted player football has ever seen. Him and Messi, the two greatest footballers in talent-wise, right? But I think in terms of what they could do, like Henry could do similar things to what R9 could do. In terms of R9 was a fit, like strong physically, but he's one of the fastest players that we've ever seen. Great ball control, close control skill, but also could score goals and finish as well as anyone has ever done in football history. I think Henry has very similar qualities: big, strong, fast, but supremely technical. He could do anything with the ball. And like that's why I think Thierry Henry is better than Mohamed Salah. And Mohamed Salah is like not like that. He's not as technical. He's not as good on the ball, and he's a great player on the ball, right? He can do things. He can take players on. He can assist. He can pass. He can score goals. He can finish well. But if you're talking about just what you see, what I think Henry is better than Mohamed Salah, and he is the greatest Premier League player of all time. And not to take anything away from Mohamed Salah, I think Mohamed Salah is a top 4 Premier League player all time. He is amazing. He is great. I think Mohamed Salah is the greatest, and it's not even close. It's not close. Mohamed Salah is the greatest African player to play in England. I think maybe Mohamed Salah is the greatest African player of all time. He might be the greatest African player to play in Europe. Now that's a different discussion. But he's definitely the greatest African player to play in the Premier League. And people say Drogba. I don't think Drogba is as good as, or was ever as good as, Mohamed Salah. I don't think Drogba has reached like the levels that Mohamed Salah has. Like Mohamed Salah has had, and I think this season he's definitely the Ballon d'Or front runner. But he's had seasons like that before as well. I don't think Didier Drogba has ever done that. And I like Drogba. I liked his clutch steel, his veins. He was one of the greatest big game players of all time. But he's definitely not as good as Mohamed Salah in my opinion. Like there were seasons where Didier Drogba as a number 9 striker in like 24 games he'd score 4 goals. In 28 games in the Premier League he'd score 5 goals. You know, and I mean, like no knock to Didier Drogba, he was amazing. But as a number 9, you want your striker to score more than that. You know, in 8 seasons, Didier Drogba only scored 20 or more goals twice for Chelsea. Twice. And he was great. Again, he was great. But the greatest African player in Premier League history is not even close. It's Mohamed Salah. It's Mohamed Salah. But he's not the greatest Premier League player of all time. I think that crown still sits with Thierry Henry. Maybe someone will come and snatch it from him, but as I am speaking today, Thierry Henry is still the king. King Henry. Long may it continue. King Henry. Thank you very much for watching. It was a very fun video to make. Nice video to make for me. I enjoyed it. Remember to click subscribe, like, comment. What do you think? Who's the greatest Premier League player of all time? Who are your favorite Premier League players of all time? Let me know. Share your thoughts. Remember, at We Talk Football 24, YouTube and Instagram. Look us up on Facebook as well at We Talk Football. Have a nice weekend. Awareness.